I chose to listen to the video from Uncle Robert Paul Young, or Uncle Bob as he prefers to be known. There are a lot of similarities between Dadiri and the pedagogy of listening, particularly about how we draw from the deep well within ourselves to take in what is being told to us and to respond without rushing to answer, but rather to question further and go deeper into understanding what we are being told. This too links to the 4 levels of listening, where one needs to listen to understand rather than to reply. I concentrated on the pedagogy of listening, trying to focus on the 100 languages being offered by the storyteller so that I, the story listener, can learn from more than just the words alone. As described in the pedagogy of listening, I wanted to be fully present, to use all my senses to take in Uncle Bob's story and not be distracted by outside stimuli. I started with my eyes closed in order to truly focus and listen with my senses, not just my ears. Early in Uncle Bob's story, my eyes shot wide open when he was telling us his name and described himself as number 24. In that moment, I was challenged to open my eyes, not only physically, but also metaphorically, and to take in Uncle Bob's story, his words, and his emotion. I watched his face closely, the moments where he sighed and the moments that brought tears to his eyes or made his hands shake. These were spoken in a language that is more than words, and demanded of me in these moments were, as the pedagogy of listening describes, an openness to change. I, as a listener, was being asked to remember this story and to act to ensure this injustice would never occur again. Through deeply listening to his story, Uncle Bob taught me more about the stolen generations than I could gain from reading an academic text or watching a video on the history of the situation. One bias I feel I was confronted with is that the trauma still is deeply felt by those who experience this pain. It does not just go away with time and was not scrubbed away by the government and officials who took the children away. The people who experienced this trauma discovered the lies they were told and have to live now with the fact that those lies were hidden from them. This is a pain I have never had to bear, but through story listening, I am faced with the reality and challenged to see and hear this truth from another person. I was extremely moved by Uncle Bob's reference to himself as number 24. This painful truth of the stolen generation, where his personhood was stripped away from him at such a young age, truly shocked me. As his story goes on, Uncle Bob revealed how physically close he had been to his mother all that time. Every little movement he made, every tremble or shake or tear seemed so familiar and familial to me. He looked like he could be my dad or my grandpa or my uncle of my very own. My family has not had to experience such heart-wrenching trauma as Uncle Bob, but I felt in that moment that this experience was forced upon him purely for the reason of racism and hatred. Were any one of us born in his place, that would have been our experience too. It is a great privilege to never have had this story in my family, but it comes with great shame that it was people like my own who were accountable for these actions. Reading Rinaldi's chapter on the pedagogy of listening has taught me a lot about my own teaching practice. Children have a right to be heard and taken seriously. If we look at the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, Article 12 specifically dictates that children have the right to have a say in matters that affect them. We make decisions for children every day in our work as educators. We owe them the time to listen to them and process their thoughts and ideas seriously and respectfully. Further to this, Article 28 lists education as a right of the child. As FLIA's studies suggest, educators need to argue for the inclusion of early childhood education in that right, alongside primary and secondary education. These rights, among many others, were all contravened during the course of Uncle Bob's story, and therefore during his life. Listening to the children and understanding the impact we have upon them makes huge strides in everything from protecting them from harm to ensuring the best possible outcomes in life. There may be many reasons that a child is held back from education, barriers that stand in the way of access. That it is our job to hear about, understand, and remove. These barriers may be practice-based, expectations for children with disabilities to sit through group times, for example. We can listen to children and their families about their specific needs and work out ways to provide them that honour their specific way of learning. There also may be trauma or intergenerational trauma that stands in the way of families and their children trusting the education system or trusting anything in connection with government, which the Foundation for Indigenous Sustainable Health breaks down for people new to the concept in their YouTube video. Having staff and teams take the time to deeply engage with and listen to elders such as Uncle Bob can go a long way to having them understand the deeply entrenched traumas that affect Aboriginal people to this day. We can then continue this important listening work in the creation of our raps, as outlined in the Talking About Practice handout from NQS. Thank you.